Today we're going to make some clay turtle sculptures. To begin our turtle sculpture, we're going to start with a larger piece of clay, and we're going to use one finger. That's right, one finger. You're going to dip it in a little bit of the clay water from your doggy dish and just put a few drops around like that with that finger so that you get a few water droplets on your clay, and then you're going to wedge it or squeeze it or mix in the water. It all means the same thing. We want to get our clay warmed up and easy to use. You're going to have to use your hand muscles and your finger muscles. Squeeze the clay in your hand. You can even mash it on the table a little bit to get it warmed up. And the more you squeeze, after a little bit, it should be easier to use. Like the clay is getting softer and more squishy, and that's what we want, okay? Once you get the water mixed in and it's not slimy anymore, we're gonna roll it into a ball. So we're gonna roll it in our hands, and we want our hands to go in a circle, okay? At first it's gonna be a little stubborn, but then as your piece of clay gets smoother, it'll get a little easier, okay? I like to turn it around and then roll this side. Make sure you're rolling your hands in a circle, not up and down, in a circle. You can even do this on your newspaper. Rolling your hands in a circle, then flipping it and rolling it. And you're gonna keep rolling it until it's pretty smooth, like a baseball shape. We call this a sphere. A three-dimensional circle or a baseball shape is called a sphere. It's not flat anymore. It's not flat like a circle on our piece of paper. It is a 3D circle. That means it's got sides, it's got a front and a back and a top and a bottom. Okay, mine is pretty smooth. Once you get almost all the cracks out, it's time to do the next part. This is so fun. We're gonna get to step on our clay to make a textured pattern on our turtle's shell, because if you look at a turtle shell, it's not smooth. It's got some bumps and cracks and lumps on it. So we're gonna make some textures. That's what texture is. So we're gonna carry our newspaper. We're gonna hold it up with our hands and carry our newspaper to the floor. So we're gonna pick it up like this, and your little piece of clay can be there too, but just be very careful. If it rolls, just pick it up and then put it back on the newspaper, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'm on the floor, boys and girls. My newspaper is on the floor right in front of my table, and there's my large ball of clay. I'm going to use the top of my shoe, and I'm just gonna step on it gently. Not gonna stomp, I'm just gonna press or step gently and then take my foot away. If your clay gets stuck on your foot, you can pull it off, okay? And that's it. Miss Dalmy may come around and tell you if you need to press a little bit more, but when you're done, the lines on the bottom of your shoe should show up on the lines of your clay. Looks so cool. This is called texture. Once Miss Dalmy has checked your shoe print to make sure it's big enough, you are going to lift your newspaper up with two hands and bring it back to the table. And if your pieces of clay roll around, just put them back. And we're actually going to look at the textured side. This is going to be the top of your turtle shell. We're going to flip it over so we can see the smooth side where there's nothing. So flip it over and put that over here away from the middle, because in the middle we're going to use 3 pieces of smaller clay now. So we're going to make some coils that are going to turn into our legs, arms, and head and our tail of our turtle. So I'm going to take one, and remember what we did before. We kind of squished it a little bit to make sure that it's squishy and gets softer. We're also going to add 1 drop of water with 1 finger. Do not get 2 fingers in that doggy dish, and do not get 2 drips of water, because these are so small. We only need 1 little drip of water. And then we're going to squish it with our hands. We don't need to use our whole hand like we did before. So I like to just kind of do this, maybe your hands a little bit, and then we're going to roll it into a ball just like we did before to make a sphere. Okay, now we're going to make a coil. A coil is kind of like a little snake. Okay, I'm going to have my turtle shell nearby because I'm going to need it. And this time we're rolling up and down, up and down. Okay, we're not going in a circle. Now, if you roll it up and down, what starts to happen is it turns into this little snake shape. This is a coil. I want to roll mine so that it's longer than my turtle shell. So I like to roll it a few times and then lay it across my turtle shell. Is my coil, is this end and this end longer than my shell? a little tiny bit, but I want it to get a little bit longer because I want this to stick out of its shell just like a turtle's leg sticks out of his shell. That's much better. See how it's longer on this end and this end? That's what I want. So I'm not going to press it down. I just laid it there so I could measure. Now I'm going to take it off and I'm going to make 2 more just like it. Here's one. I'm going to add a drop of water, squish, squish, squish. Roll it into a ball in my hands or on the newspaper, and I want to roll it about the same length as this one. So I'm going to roll it a little bit and then I'm going to stop and measure. Okay, is that one long enough? Not quite. So I'm just going to roll it a little bit more. Okay, now it's long enough, and if I want to double check, it's longer and it sticks out of my shell. That's what I want. I'm going to do that one more time. 1 drop of water, squishy, 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 or squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Get that water mixed in. If we don't get water in our clay, it could be really dry. And we don't want dry clay because it will crack or break. Then I'm going to roll it into a ball or a sphere on my newspaper in my hands. And then I'm rolling up and down, up and down. I'm going to stop and measure. It's a little short, so I'm going to keep going just a little bit more. I don't want it that long. I just want it about a little bit longer than my shell, and I'm going to double check, and that is perfect. Okay, go ahead and make 3 coils that are a little bit longer than your shell. Now we're going to attach these coils to the back of our shell. Remember, we're on the smooth side, not the shoe print side, okay? We're on the smooth side. And we're going to use something very silly. We're going to use more clay water and a toothbrush. So we make sure our toothbrush is wet, and we are going to brush the top of our coil. We're going to do one at a time. I like to tap, tap to get the extra water off, and then I'm going to brush, like go back and forth like this, my coil until you see some toothbrush marks. You see those toothbrush marks on mine? You want to do that to yours. So you're going to press down a little bit so that you do see the toothbrush marks. And then I'm going to make a toothbrush mark on my clay, the smooth side, right? And I'm going to make an X. So the first part of the X is a diagonal line like that. I like to do it 2 times to make sure I see those toothbrush lines. Do you see it on mine? Good. Now you're going to take your toothbrushy side of your coil, flip it upside down, and it needs to touch this toothbrushy side. And you're going to lay it on the diagonal toothbrush line of your clay, and then you're going to use 1 finger and gently press so that it stays, okay? I like to even kind of wiggle it so make sure it stays. When we add a piece of a coil to this clay, or when we put 2 pieces of clay together, we have to use a special glue for clay so it doesn't fall off. The special glue is called the clay water, which we call slip. And then adding toothbrushy lines is also needed to help the clay stick together, and that is called scoring. Okay? Now I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to make it crisscross like an X, remember? So I'm not going to stick it yet. I just laid it down to check. Get to the toothbrush, tap, tap. And remember, we want to make toothbrushy lines on the coil. I like to do it twice so I can see those lines. And then I'm going to make an X. To make an X, I would have to go this way, diagonal line. So I'm going to go across my coil, the first coil, and across my shell. I like to do it 2 times or maybe 3. And then toothbrushy side, flip it over. So my toothbrushy side will be touching my toothbrushy side on the shell. Toothbrushy sides have to be together. And then I'm going to gently use a finger to press. I'm not going to mash it down too much. I'm going to press it so it sticks, and I like to kind of do like that to make sure it doesn't wiggle and it doesn't pop off, okay? Now I made an X. Now I'm going to make a vertical line down the middle like this. It's an X with a vertical line down the middle. So I do the same thing. Tap, tap, the extra water, toothbrush twice. Make sure I can see toothbrushy lines, and then make a vertical line through the middle of my X, across the shell and across the coils that made the X. Toothbrushy side, flip it over, make sure it lays on top of the toothbrushy line I made with on the back of my turtle, and then gently press, press, press. Okay, wiggle if you need to. And all of my little clay coils are poking out just a little bit. This looks like the bottom of the turtle, doesn't it? It looks like 2 arms, 2 legs. There's his head, there's his tail, and that's what we want. Your turn. Now that we've added our coil pieces, remember this is kind of like the bottom of the turtle. Now we're gonna gently flip him over, and now we see our textured side, and it looks more like a turtle. Now he's got all his appendages, or his arms, legs, and tail. Now, I want you to decide where your head's gonna be and where your tail is gonna be. I think this would be a good head because it looks like it's got 2 arms and a head in the middle. Once you found your head, you're gonna grab a skewer. This is a very long skewer. That's what people use to make shish kebab, but we're using it for our clay as a clay tool today. And we wanna grab the bottom where it's pointy like a pencil. We're not gonna hold it way up here or in the middle. It could break, or it could, it won't have a lot of control and you won't be able to make what you need to make. So we want to make some eyes first and a mouth. So we want to have good control so we can do this correctly, okay? He's already got a little hole in mine, so I'm going to make the eyes first, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of hold his head underneath so it doesn't move. I'm going to poke a hole and maybe twisty, 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 and I'm going to make another one next to it. Poke it or make it twisty, 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 like that, and then take the skewer out. And now he's got 2 eyes. And then I like to take my skewer and turn it sideways. And then I like to hold his head to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And then just press in, and it makes that hole a little bit bigger, like he's got a little mouth that's open. Or you can make the little twisty mouth if you want his mouth to look like an O, like he's making that expression, okay? After you make 2 eyes and a mouth, you're going to make a tail. Now, let's see. Here's his head, arm, okay? And then we have 2 legs. His tail is in the middle. So to make a tail, I'm gonna make it pointy. So I'm gonna use some pinching fingers, and I'm just gonna pinch, maybe flatten and pinch until it's pretty pokey, okay? Like a little triangle. And then I am done. I've made a turtle clay sculpture, and I can't wait to see your finished one. Awesome job today.